Hello and thank you for joining me today. I'm Jan Clothier from Thinking Stamping and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in New Zealand. Today's tutorial is using the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set and a technique that I've always known as Joseph's Coat. Now I made this card for a design team that I'm on, the Colour Inspiration crew, and the colours that we had were basic black, real red, Bermuda Bay and crushed curry. So that's kind of picked my colours for me, and for the sentiment today I have used this set, which is a favourite of mine, Best Year, because I really like the wishing you your best year yet and the happy birthday combination. And of course I used the warm wishes for a happy Christmas quite a lot at Christmas time as well. So let's get started, and we'll start with what do we need to make this card. So first up, I've got a base of Bermuda Bay, which is 14.8 centimetres tall. It's the width of a piece of A4 paper, so it's scored at 10.5 to give us a card front. Now there's quite a lot of matting going on the front. So I've got a black mat, which is 10 centimetres by 14.3. Then I've got another Bermuda Bay, which is half a centimetre smaller again. So it's 9.5 by 13.8. And that will eventually go like that. Now this is actually a piece of white paper, and I have got that cut larger because I like to work with a bigger piece and cut it down small, although eventually it will end up being 9 centimetres by 13.3, but it's a little bit bigger than that at the moment. And for the inside, I have got another black mat at 10 by 14.3, and in fact that's probably the piece I cut for the inner there, which we'll just pop aside, and that's the piece that we'll work on to make this butterfly panel. In addition to that, you're also going to need another little piece of white for the sentiment, and I've already stamped that. I decided that for this card, instead of using the wishing you your best year yet, I would just do the happy birthday to you. And I've cut an exact same piece out of crushed curry. Now what I used for that was the Tasteful Labels, and I used that one there is the die that I used for that. Of course you could use whatever suits the sentiment you're going to use. Now this card is quite a lot of fun, and there's also quite a lot of room for things to go wrong if you're not careful, and if you're unlucky, even if you are careful. So we'll start off, I'm just going to use a scrappy bit of paper because it is quite messy, and I'm going to start with my 3 inks, my Real Red, my Crushed Curry and my Bermuda Bay, and I'm going to take my blending brushes and I am going to ink them up, and I am just randomly going, but quite firmly, going to colour my piece of paper. Now I've just used basic white. You can use shimmery cardstock if you like that shimmery look, but you know, it's personal choice. You know, some people would say you'd have to use shimmery because the ink goes on better. Well, frankly, you're going to cover up most of the ink. So as long as the ink goes on dark, it doesn't really matter too much what the ink does. What do I need? I need a yellow blending brush. I keep my blending brushes, I try and keep one brush for each colour families, not the Stampin' Up colour families, just I've got one brush that I use for all my reds, and one brush that I use for yellows, and one for blues, and one for greens, one for neutrals. And I just clean them, wipe them on a microfiber cloth in between uses. Now, as you can see, I'm not paying too much attention to getting things all smooth. What I am trying to do, however, is get the colour quite dark, which is why I'm holding it firmly on the head, so I can get lots of pressure and get some strong colour applied. Okay, and now my blue brush for Bermuda Bay, and again, same thing. I just want strong colour. It doesn't matter if the colours blend a little bit. In fact, it's quite nice if you get a little bit of colour mixing going on, so that, you know, you get some oranges and maybe even some purpley bits showing through. Really doesn't matter. And of course, this is also why every time you make this card, or a card like this, it's going to turn out slightly differently. Now, if you want to, you can go over it again with a blending brush and just kind of smooth it out. But as I say, it's really not going to matter with what comes next. Now, the one thing I would say about this is we are going to emboss this. And so, in order to maximise your chances of the embossing powder going only on your stamp and not in random other places, I would suggest not only using the embossing buddy, but I would suggest making this inky panel and then going away and doing something else and coming back in half an hour or so when it's dried up, because you do not want embossing powder in the wrong place with this particular technique, and that's where things can fall over. So if you imagined that that had been sitting there for, you know, an hour or two while I was off doing the washing or reading my book or whatever it was I was going to do, then I would come back, I'd get my stamp, whatever stamp you're going to use. I would use Versamark because we're embossing. With a big stamp, it's usually bigger, easier rather to ink it up this way around rather than pushing the stamp into the pad. I'd get my embossing buddy and I would give it a really good rub down with that. Again, imagining that this has had time to dry, and then just impress down nice and firmly, because you want time for that Versamark to transfer onto your inked up pad. And then when that's done, I'd get my clear embossing powder and I'd sprinkle it over. I suppose I could do that. And you can see that it's quite hard to see, but you can see where you have inked up. Now you do want to check that you've got good coverage, and you also want to, you know, hold it into the light so you can see where the powder is. You can use, you know, a little brush to try and get rid of anything that's in the wrong place. And then you just get your heat tool out and, you know, I'm not going to do it now because I've got one already prepared, but then you just heat it up and emboss it. So here is one that I did earlier, and you see it gets quite tricky because once the powder heats you can't see it unless you're holding it into the light. Now you do want to double check as much as you can that you have in fact not left any bits unheated, because it will be a bit of a mess if you do, but we'll see. We'll hope for the best here. This is both the messy bit and the fun bit. So what you do next is you get your Memento Tuxedo black ink and you just do that. So it goes beautifully black. Of course, this is the moment where you discover if you have missed anything out, or if you've got ink in the embossing powder in the wrong place. Then you just get a tissue and rub over the top, and the places where it's clear embossed, you get the colour from the underneath sponging comes through. And you've got your nice piece to work with. Now, this is the reason why I cut mine bigger, because when things go wrong, generally it's around the edges. Now I've got a little piece there where I perhaps either didn't heat it up enough or the embossing powder didn't stick well enough, but I think we'll survive it. So then I'm going to just cut. You see there's a little bit along the bottom that I don't like the look of, so I'm going to cut this down to 13.3. 13.3. Oh, I'm not going to cut it all off of one bit though, so I'm going to take some off the bottom. Whoops. Some off the bottom, and I'm going to take a bit off the top until I get it to 13.3, which also got rid of that little piece at the top that I didn't like the look of. And now I also want it to only be 9 across, so I've got a bit of a messy bit there. So I think I will just take a slice down there. Okay, so now we'll do some assembling. So we've got this piece, which is 9 by 13.3, which will hopefully go onto that mat nicely. Yes. So pop that in there. Now we have got this piece, this black mat, which will go onto the Bermuda Bay card base. Now, this is going to go on here in the end, but before I do that, I need to attach my ribbon, and I also need to test out where exactly I'm going to put my sentiment. So first of all, I'll just layer up my happy birthday with its little crushed curry shadow. Now on my sample card, I've done it down the bottom, but I do have that little bit there that I'm a little unhappy with. So we might just go for a slightly alternative design with this one, and I'm going to now put my sentiment up in the middle. So this is my little ribbon trick. So I'm just going to put a little bit of Stampin' Seal on the back, which is going to act like a tacking, and then I'm going to take some of this crinkle ribbon, crinkled seam binding, which is beautiful. So, because it's beautiful because firstly I like the crinkled look, but secondly it's beautiful because it ties such a pretty bow. So I'm just going to pop a little bit over the back like that, and snip it. And now, see, my Stampin' Seal was acting a bit like tacking stitches, just holding it in place. And now I'm going to come around with my glue and make sure I've got some glue at the ends of my ribbon, because I don't want it to come unattached at the wrong moment. And I'm just going to pop that in there like that, and use my wiggle room to just make sure I've got everything nice and straight. Now I'm going to dimensional on my happy birthday. And again, if you've watched me, you know that I do like to err on the side of caution when it comes to dimensionals, because I don't like things to sag. So we will add that, perhaps slightly more centrally than I would have done if I'd been putting it down the bottom. And I'm going to cut myself about 25 centimetres of ribbon. Okay, and now I can tie myself a nice bow. I can just tutu around with it and make it how I want. Trim the end. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I might just tuck that under there for a bit, just so it's out of the way while I'm working on the rest of it. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to bring in the basic rhinestone jewels, and I'm going to bring in my Bermuda Bay stamping blend. This is the darker one, and I'm going to make myself some Bermuda Bay gemstones. And there's the nice thing about blends, is they give you the ability to colour rhinestones, among other things. So I think we'll pop one there. Where will I pop it? One there. And perhaps we'll just pop that little one up there. Now the other thing I should say while we're on the topic of blends is, if you happen to have some very, very tiny little flecks of embossing powder in the wrong place, you can use your dark black stamping blend to just colour over any, just, you know, little tiny, hey, sometimes just get those tiny little dots of embossing powder in the wrong place. You can use a black stamping blend to touch that up. And then the final thing we're going to do is I will just add in an inner, because I do like a white inner to write on. And the reason that I'm matting it onto a piece of basic black is we have got 4 layers on the front. And I always think that when you give a card to someone and you want them to be able to display it, that they look so much, you know, they stand up so much more nicely when the front and the back have a more even weight. So because I've got a lot of stuff on the front, I'm going to add in, whoops, an extra layer on my inner as well. Now you could put a little stamp in there. I could, actually, in fact what I will do is one of those little offcut pieces that I had from the front, I'm just going to add in as a little bit of decoration on the inside, just so it's not completely plain. And we'll just wiggle room again, slide that along so it's central. Done. And there you have it, Joseph's coat with Butterfly Brilliance. Happy birthday card. Now, if you have questions or you'd like to know more, you're welcome to contact me. You can reach me through my blog or through my Facebook page, the details of which are going to pop up at the end card of this video and appear in the video description below. And if you live in New Zealand and you'd like to shop with me, there's also links to my online store in both of those places. And if you've enjoyed what you've seen and you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything new. Thanks very much for joining me.